Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you all made it today on Thursday, October 10th for a special panel edition of the Fire's Edge. Very exciting. So we have a really cool panel today. 3 fascinating different perspectives on what are your dreams and what are your fears around AI, and how do we want to hold these dreams and fears? How do we work with these? How do we deal with them? How do we work with them? How do we evolve with them? How do we hold all of it? And I think it's going to be a really fascinating and interesting discussion. And I can't wait to introduce the panelists to you. Before I do that, as is our custom and tradition, I would love to hear what's been happening with you this week. What's on your mind? What have you been thinking about? Yeah, anything, since the last episode, or just that's on your mind in your life, things you're noticing, things you're seeing in your life, we would love to hear. So please, let's hear from a couple people. Let's warm up next to the fire and hear what's on your mind. Christina McInnes.
Good morning. Good morning. From last week, I created a new Facebook page and a new social media channel. And what was in the background was that, okay, am I going to get a lot of AI generated spam or bots or whatever, and as followers? And so far, I'm getting generic followers. So there's something there that's in the background of, okay, is this worth my time? Am I going to be posting to AI generated bot? But I did take the initiative to open up a new social media channel this week.
Cool. Thank you. What's the social media channel called? Do you want to post it in the chat? Oh, yeah, please.
Tickle Me Reiki. It's for my Reiki initiatives.
Okay, cool. Well, please post it in the chat so we can follow you. And thank you for sharing. Who is next?
Well, I'm going to jump in real quick, Justin. I don't want to tip off what I'm going to share later too much, but 3 big themes keep jumping up for me. Disruption, revolution, and evolution.
All right, cool. All different speeds and experiences of change, perhaps. Very, very cool. Thank you. Matt Key, I saw you had your hand up for a second. You want to share something?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, we were talking about superintelligence, AI superintelligence yesterday in the other marketing group that we meet on, and we were having a discussion as human beings and bouncing ideas back and forth. And what got generated out of that was this sort of understanding now that once everything is connected in real time, this AI superintelligence will be mushrooming, clouding on ideas that'll happen at such a speed and such a velocity. We human beings, we just simply won't be able to compete until we get Neuralink. But imagine if right now, the 16 of us that were on this call, if we were all connected to our friends and our family, and everything we were talking about here, they were experiencing, and then they were playing off what we were saying, and then that was coming back to us in real time. And that our 16 of us was actually 1,600 of us. And so we were having this discussion yesterday. We were just getting this massive understanding of this AI superintelligence of what's going to be possible for the human experience when we actually, if we do connect through Neuralink, what's going to be possible for the human experience when that happens.
Cool, interesting. Did anyone on this ever see the series by the Wachowskis, I think it's Lana Wachowski created it, called Sense8? Anyone ever see that? No one? Oh, it's such a good. Go on Netflix and watch Sense8. It's kind of refers to what you're talking about human beings being connected, and there's this pod of 8 of them, and they're all over the world, but they're somehow connected. It's just the most fascinating story. Thank you for sharing that, Matt. Okay. All right. So today we have a panel. I want to thank Emmanuelle for suggesting this panel. And the the topic is hopes and fears. So in your life, in what you've heard about, in just what's in your mind, how you are imagining what the future is going to be like, and then probably in your profession as well, and maybe other aspects of your life, AI is going to play a probably outsized role in helping to craft and shape what our future looks like. And because of that, because there's a lot of potential uncertainties and unknowns, people have different relationships to that uncertainty. And for some people, there's fears, some people dreams, and maybe a combination of the two. And the interesting question is like, okay, well, all this uncertainty and all these possibilities are in the field, but how do we work with that skillfully, intelligently, knowing that it's kind of like well, like our very first episode, Layman was talking about, maybe there is a dimension of almost having to relate to it like in the shamanic way, because it's things we can't understand or predict or control. It's bigger than us in certain ways. So how do we hold those hopes and fears? And I'm really excited and fascinated to see what the panelists have to say. So Emmanuelle, if you would, we didn't flip a coin or I didn't give an order, but if you'd kick us off today, and then we'll go to Mark Rabin, a dear friend of mine, a brilliant, brilliant energy systems entrepreneur and just complex thinker about how to, and entrepreneurs who's had a huge impact in transforming the energy system, and I think is going to continue to do that throughout the trajectory of his career. And also Logan, another dear friend of mine who is also kind of a systems thinker, an engineer, and someone who has a passion to reshape the housing situation on the planet and make housing affordable and accessible to human beings all over the planet. So I cannot wait to hear what you all have to say. It's going to be a fascinating and amazing conversation today. And Emmanuelle, I know you have some slides, so why don't you introduce yourself, and then whenever you're ready, share your slides and kick us off. Oh, and I don't really want to set a timer, but just so you know where you're at, I'm going to give about a 10-minute timer for each person, so we can try to do about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So please go ahead, Emmanuelle.
Hi, everybody. Before I start, I just want to say something about what you just said, Justin. You said we have hopes, we have fears, and what I heard is like, how do we reason about this in a nice, calm way, in a nice, mature way? And I think like even if all of us were taking the most informed and mature and philosophical way, we would still disagree, right? So I think the most important thing is to be well informed before jumping in with opinions. But it's human nature to want to do that. Sorry, I'm just gonna share the screen right away.
Yeah, and you should be set up to do that, but if you have any problems, let me know.
Yeah, no, it's good. There it is. Do you see it? Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. All right. So before I start, a little bit about me. So I grew up in Montreal. And I didn't grow up at all in a tech environment, not even my early adulthood. So I grew up in a world of intellectuals. My parents were into literature, French literature, cinema. I would wake up in the middle of the night and they would have friends over and they would be debating the 10 best movies and they needed to agree on that, right? So the feminism, French philosophers, Sartre, Beauvoir, Rousseau. And then from there, I sort of find my own passion for the art has always been a part of my life. So arts in general, and then mathematics and biology. And from biology, I found Richard Dawkins. And from Richard Dawkins, I found Christopher Hitchens. And then Hitchens died, and a lot of us were left with Sam Harris. And that's sort of like going from Carl Sagan to Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's a little tough. But Sam Harris is not the greatest writer, but he really found his knack at podcasting. And he has amazing guests. And I've been following him for a very, very long time, since the beginning of the podcast. And through him, I came into tech and then the crypto world, right? Like a lot of us met in the crypto world. And it's funny, the disruptive, was mentioned earlier. And, we all came to crypto before crypto was a meme. And I didn't really know what it was meant to be disrupting, but I was really attracted to that side of things, And then from crypto, we all went to large language model, machine learning, and AI. And I think that just before I jump in, my fears and my hopes, I just want, I think it was mentioned earlier, to take a moment to say, like, this is an amazing moment. I'm super excited about this moment in time. I'm really excited to be part of it. And it feels like we're in the before times right now. And, I know there's a lot of people really worried and occupied with legislation and protecting and all of that. And that's great. We need that. But I'm really interested in what's happening in terms of the technology itself. So let's jump in. I'm going to try to actually keep it really short if I can. And I'd like to have interaction before the end. So like interaction on my slides, if you guys want to dive into this. So my biggest fear is that all of a sudden we become like in the Matrix, right? Like I know Kung Fu, I know Jiu-Jitsu, and then it would be like, I know art, right? All of a sudden, all of us all at once know art, and they can make art, they can compose a symphony or an opera. And then I think that if you go to the last paragraph, like it raises profound questions about what it means to create, right? To express. And with the imperfections and the depth of humanity, right? Because if you know art, then you're missing on the subtleties of the moment in time, right? And also the mistakes and the rewriting and all of that. That said, that is also my biggest dream. I think, wouldn't it be wonderful if we were all artists? And from a perspective of understanding art, I think that's amazing. And I put a Chris Rock quote in my dream slide because I've always been fascinated by what people say about, that animals or whatever, right? Like it was the trainer in California who got eaten by his tiger. And then Chris Rock is like, everybody's saying that that tiger went crazy. That tiger didn't go crazy. That tiger went tiger, right? And it's like, okay, so what is humanity augmented going to go like, right? So that's wow. And really, really big. And then this last slide is what I've noticed the common fears are. And, at the top of the list is losing your job, right? Like I have a friend who recently lost her job as an architect because she wasn't willing to use technology, to use AI. And so she was fired with cause for not wanting to use AI. And I think it's beautiful because she's turning it on its head and she's starting her own AI company that will sort of help distribute this new technology for architects, right? So that's sort of, I think, what our attitude should be. So you can read all of those. And then my dreams, like I said, augmented human knowledge, all humans are artists, advances in medicine and research. I think everybody would have that on their lists. And then I have a couple odd ones. So since I was little, I've been wanting to communicate with ants. I have this fascination with ants. So if I go singular, Why can an and go singular? I think, and then finally we'll be able to talk. Yes. And I'll be able to ask all these questions I've been wanting to ask them forever. And then I put real sexual liberation, particularly for women. And if anybody wants to engage on that, be my guests. So yeah, if anybody has comments, questions, jump in. I'm opening it up. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm curious for you, Emmanuelle, when you kind of allow yourself to hold these fears and dreams at the same time, and you view these different sides of the equation, as we might say,
Mm-hmm.
what jumps out as you as potentially totally different and ethical dilemma as human beings have ever faced before, and what strikes you as simply an evolution of the same types of tensions we perhaps have always held as human beings?
Well, I find it like, I think in all the other meetings that we've had, I've always said like, because we talk a lot about leadership, right? So I've always said like, I feel a little bit uncomfortable considering myself a leader in this field when, or just a leader in general, when so many people in the world are not well right now. And I'm not just talking about all the wars that we have, but mental health, right? There's a lot of people struggling with mental health. So I think that we have already a lot of ethical problems, right? Why are we not doing anything about Israel right now, right? And you can have whatever opinion you want. And me saying that doesn't even sort of show what I think about it, but it's like there's something huge happening. And I think that I've always been one to be interested in playing chess instead of having field battles, right? So like, could we have my AI against your AI? To the better AI wins, and then that's who gets the land or gets the water, or like, I don't know. I think we're being unreasonable if we think that AI is going to both solve all our problems or destroy us, because we're already so humanity is full of intricacies that are really dark, right? And in one of my slides, I don't know if you had the time to read it, but I in the dream slide, I say that, sorry, I have a naive sort of point of view that I think that maybe we can end human darkness, human evil, and but not necessarily through AI, just through discussion, through philosophy, through taking our time to engage with one another, right? My speech is over.
I'm not sure what I think about Zoom adding those little sound effects to the timers, but anyway, oh, thank you so much, Emmanuelle. And I love some of your like more interesting dreams. The sexual revolution that's just so fertile and juicy. And also the ant talking with animals. I know that there is actually a huge initiative underway to use AI to parse whale language, and they seem to be making considerable progress. So I wouldn't be surprised if that could happen, and it would be so fascinating and interesting. I never thought about ants before, but very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Okay, next up, Mark Rabin. How do you see this? What's your thought about all of this?
Good morning, everyone. First, I'll just preface this by saying I am certainly not an AI expert in any way, shape, or form. So just throw that out there. Thank you, Emmanuelle, for those great slides. So I guess a little bit of background. I know a couple of you guys. Hi, Melody. And so I started off my career as a geologist and started looking at the Earth and the planet and started to understand. I always joke that everything I learned about the Earth, I learned by being a petroleum geologist in my early days, but it started to get me thinking about the planet and about the Earth systems, which led me to understanding and studying energy and energy economics and how we move power around, or how we move energy and power around. The first thing you learn in energy economics is that there's 1 billion people that still don't have access to basic electricity, which is kind of crazy on this planet when we're talking about restarting, nuclear power plants on 3 Mile Island to have enough power for data centers, for AI. So it's, and that's taken me down a path into renewable energy entrepreneurship, clean tech as well. So, the world of clean technologies, and how we're looking at the next 100 years of reimagining our energy systems on this planet. And clean tech and climate tech, I'm going to use those interchangeably. They're very similar. I think it was a bit of a rebrand recently. Clean tech has its ups and downs, multiple restarts, but we're now seeing the decoupling of climate technologies and oil. They were interlinked for most of the history of those two, but they're starting to decouple now. And what we're also seeing, I'll talk about it in a sec, but in terms of where I'm at, I spend a lot of time thinking about energy systems, clean energy systems, battery systems. I actually, one of my focuses in the last 10 years was bringing clean technologies to Hollywood film production. So I have a funny lens into the production side of film production, but also onto the front end of film productions, because if there's one industry that should go pollution free, can go pollution free, and hopefully will go pollution free, it's going to be film and entertainment and live events. Because if we can't do that, then we're so far fucked on this planet, because that's just entertainment. We can't entertain ourselves without taking a huge shit on the planet. Then I don't know what the hell we're doing here. So that's where I'm at today. I personally don't have any fears about AI. Not one. I don't even wake up, not even one moment. Is the world twisted? Are there going to be nefarious powers that are going to harness AI? Absolutely. But there are nefarious powers harnessing every single aspect of our economy and actually twisting things into making folks, operate into their own worst interest. So that's already happening. So that's just something that I think we've got to understand in human nature, and so on. So my true biggest fear is that humans, left up to our own bullshit on this planet, are more of a threat than what AI is. And any civilization intent on surviving would not be doing what we're doing today. So I think anything to help us figure something out that's different is a bonus, and AI is that. So I actually think we actually need AI to survive, and that's something that we're really spinning our wheels here on this planet, because we clearly don't have the capacity to really imagine and actually calculate and actually work on and compute the truly complex problems that we are facing. Our 8+ billion people on this planet, understanding the complexity of Earth systems and how that's affecting our day-to-day. Look at what's going on down in the Gulf right now. The largest hurricane that's almost ever in the history of ever. Fascinating stuff, but these are very, very complex models. Now, so it's clear to me that there's a lot of impact that AI is going to have on how we see the world around us and how we address climate. Only thing is AI on its own, I don't believe can be fully trusted. So I do see, though, a future where humans and AI work together. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So and also I think we're also basically partially enhanced already. So I think anybody who thinks that we're not already some sort of pre-cyborg thing, I would say are mistaken, because we've had phones for the last 20 years and we're completely addicted and embedded to it. And look at the problems that we still do have today. So we need to figure out how to work with this technology. But I do believe that it is, in fact, our destiny. And if you're following James Lovelock, he wrote a really great book This is something I'll reference here for those of you who don't know it, but he discusses this topic in a book that he wrote in 2019 at 100 years old. He's the one who came up with the Gaia hypothesis, which is that the Earth is this one system operating together. The book's called The Novacene, The Coming Age of Hyperintelligence. So Matt, you guys are on something there. And this predicts that a benevolent, eco-friendly artificial superintelligence will someday become the dominant life form on the planet, and argues humanity is on the brink of a new era, the Novacene, and that we're actually at the tail end of the Anthropocene, which we've all heard that term, which he claims started roughly in 1712 with the invention of the steam engine, which then brought on the Industrial Revolution, which effectively decoupled humans from the planet. It basically asserted our dominance onto the planet and our ability to harness the Earth, and basically, it took us to where we're at today, which we know it's inherently flawed, and we know there's a lot of problems there. So it's interesting. In terms of AI and climate and clean tech and some of the verticals that we're already seeing stuff happening in, and it's very interesting. With the emergence of tech and clean tech, we're seeing potential in the clean economy around agriculture and food, materials and chemicals, resources and the environment, transportation and logistics. So these are all fields of clean tech, climate tech, whatever we're calling it, where that's already starting to make some inroads in there. New types of robots that are helping agriculture, reducing pesticides, in terms of electrification and smart energy management of our future grid. Like, our power grid is the most complex machine that exists on the planet today. We take it for granted. It's been around for over 100 years. We turn our lights on, it works. It's traditionally been unidirectional. So we make power at the power plant and it goes to our homes, and that's the end of it. But what we're going to see here is that the grid of the future is truly a bidirectional, where you're producing at the same time as you're storing, as you're consuming, and it's going to be this really, really complex mesh of real-time management. And we are going to need to get way smarter on the grid. So things like that, we're already starting to see initiatives. I mean, there are initiatives called Clean AI. I have to say, though, I'll be honest, nobody actually knows really what's going to happen. I attended a climate tech and AI unconference in New York a couple weeks ago, and it was hilarious because they literally had all the smartest minds in climate tech that were in New York at the time, and nobody had a clue where it's going to go. Everybody had the buzzwords. There was the odd person who has been working in it again, trying to manage big data sets. But do you need AI for necessarily just managing big data sets? What does that look like? So these general consensus is there really nobody really knows. The other thing that I love to think about, though, is, as I mentioned earlier, is the power that is needed to run AI and all the things around AI actually may be the greatest boon to finding finally those baseload, large scale new energy technologies. Because if we are going to have climate tech or AI being a big part of our future, it needs a healthy planet and it needs lots of clean energy to do that. So maybe that actually might be the greatest catalyst for us on this planet.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much. Let me just figure out how to turn off this timer. Yep. There we go.
The hook comes out.
That was so great. Before we move on, I do want to let people know to go. I just posted in the chat. Mark has a podcast with his colleague Zena Harris called The Tie-In. It's about making the film industry more sustainable. It's getting a lot of traction, and I invite you to go check it out, subscribe. It's really worth a listen. So check that out. And thank you, Mark. And we'll dive into the Q&A in a minute with you.
Can I say one question,
Yeah,
one point on
please.
that? We haven't touched into AI yet, but what's fascinating about the film industry is the virtual production. It's actually becoming huge, and it's going to be even bigger. It's going to put people out of work. Like Emmanuelle mentioned, but it's also going to like create completely new opportunities for entertainment. It's really fascinating.
Cool. Thank you. Look forward to hearing an episode on that. Okay, Logan, wrap us up. What do you got for us today?
All right. Thank you, Justin. Well, I want to introduce myself with a bit of imagery, and my request is as I introduce myself, you also locate yourself in this imagery. Because I was really looking at how do I convey simply the things that I'm passionate about, what I've done with my life, in a way that maybe has you get who I am. And I realized like this is the human condition that quite possibly, regardless of what happens with AI, we will carry with us as an integral aspect of being a human being. So what I discovered for myself and looking at how I would kind of share with you all who I am is I'm like an iceberg. I have this public persona that's actually a very small fraction of who I am, you know, and what that looks like in the world is I'm an engineer, I'm a home builder, I'm an entrepreneur, I've been a corporate leader on the for-profit side, I've been a high-level executive leader on the nonprofit side. I've studied to be a minister. You know, so I've done these things and I've taken on these different roles at different periods in my life. And then looking at what's below the surface of the iceberg, what's above the surface points to a bit of a reflection of these less public or even hidden aspects of myself, where even in my engineering, even in my home building, even in my leadership, these hidden aspects are always in the background. You know, as Justin introduces himself often as a frosted mini wheat, and he talks about the brand side, you know, these elements that make us and give us who we are in our public personas. And then I realized that maybe I have some sense of the ratio under the surface of what's on top of the surface, but that leaves 80, 70% of who and what I actually am not just hidden from public view, but mostly in my moment by moment experience of myself, hidden from my own view. And so I'm buoyed from the deep of my own consciousness by forces mostly out of my control and mostly even out of my view. And that's what it is to be Logan in the world. And to have the experiences that I have, and regardless of what's coming with artificial intelligence, those blind spots, those deeper forces still course, still move, still cause. And so as I look at, you know, earlier I shared these themes that I'm noticing of disruption, of revolution, of evolution. And it feels new because of what we're calling artificial intelligence, you know, and it was new when it was the predecessor conversation in the 80s and 90s called machine learning. And it was new when it was earlier forms of computing that helped NASA put a man on the moon and fueled the space race. And it was new, you know, when we leverage these technologies to, you know, fight evil, as we've said, during the world wars and restore some sense of peace on the planet. And it was new, and you can go back through human history and you can trace the iterations and the growth and the expansion of these technologies that are radically disruptive, that revolutionize our personal experience and our collective societal experience, that perhaps while in a narrow view of a decade or even one lifetime, they mostly appear to be disruptive and revolutionary, there seems to be some kind of evolutionary arc that connects these dots that we can only see looking backwards, and mostly we don't know where this trajectory takes us. And when we don't know, we're in the realm of fears and dreams. And that's what this conversation is about. And so I wanted to very quickly transport us back in time about a century where, lighting our houses with this amazing technology, these highly reliable technological marvels of these lamps that run on whale oil. Nothing in human history has ever touched the reliability of that light source. Transportation is reliable. You can board a horse in any city, any town, anywhere in the country, and very quickly move beyond your own human walking speed to transport anywhere on the planet. That kind of network of transportation and the wagons and the other implements that can be powered by these horses have never been this readily available everywhere on the planet. And so here we are, circa 1900, we're living in the future. And people like Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison and that whole cohort of that era suddenly and almost inexplicably usher in this era of electricity, of petroleum-based internal combustion engines. And within the space of years, and in some cases months, horses go from being one of the most valuable transportation commodities, everyone either has one or wants one or rents one, to you can't even get enough money to pay for your dinner at the glue factory with that horse. The whaling industry disappeared out of existence, all those jobs, all of that equipment in about 1.5 years. From simple technologies like electricity and petroleum-based products. And so now here we are, and my co-panelists have pointed to this, and Justin, you've been pointing to this for some time in this conversation, at this cusp. I love how you've said, Emmanuelle, the before times. It's like, okay, we have some sense of this great disruption. So for me, I then start to look at what are the forms of intelligence, the ways that I make meaning in my life that inform the choices I make, the relationships I build. And I want to go back to who I am as the metaphor of the iceberg and these dark and deep forces that move me. And while I don't 100% know what artificial intelligence will look like, I know that it's based primarily on how I use what we usually call the gray matter between our heads. And it's already better than I am in most aspects of engineering. It's already better than I am in most aspects of marketing. It's already better than I am in most aspects of writing and speaking. It's already better than I am in almost every domain of mental capacity that I can imagine. But I'm fortunate to be a human being, whatever that is, that I'm still discovering, that I am so much more than a simple set of synapses and some grain matter. We now know we have a heart brain. So far, I don't know that artificial intelligence has even started to explore that aspect. We know that we have a gut microbiome that we might also call a gut brain. And that's not just one entity. There are millions and billions of autonomous organisms living inside each and every one of us that somehow operate by some syntropic principle that allows us to extract energy from our food and also can inform us of our own physical safety. There's some symbiosis that seems inherent to what it is to be a human being, to perpetuate human life. And so when I think about what's hidden from my view, when I think of these deeper forces, when I look at this impulse of historical trajectory of evolution and who I am as a metasystem already, I don't know if and when artificial intelligence will ever be able to replicate that. But I do know that as I have leaned into these other aspects of my intelligence, the kind of wisdom that arises and gets to flow through me that often appears to be not of me, sourced beyond me, will also arise inside of the systems we're currently calling artificial intelligence.
All right, Logan, thanks for bringing your characteristically Logan intensity to that. I was thinking maybe you should have gone into the ministry instead of becoming an engineer. But in any case, let's give these three, I don't know how you do this on Zoom, but let's give these three like a digital round of applause. Amazing, amazing. Thank you all for bringing your genius and depth and curiosity and intelligence to this conversation. Yeah, I certainly do have a couple questions, but I want to hold off and just see if anyone would like to ask these folks some questions, or if they have some questions for each other. Let's get the conversation started. And if no one says anything, I'm going to ask one. Okay, Sal, you're up. You are on mute. Oh, there we go.
I am, first of all, I'm very interested in, it's never occurred to me that this would have anything to do with my sexual freedom, so I will pursue that with Emmanuelle. But my biggest concern about AI is the power, power needs of it, and how we're going. I know it's being explored how to get it into a cleaner technology, but the fact is, all these billions of people in the world who don't have even lights to turn on, are they going to totally lose out, starve to death because, you know, AI needs so much power to even think about medical research, which I think is fabulous. It's really happening very fast and wonderfully. But it's like every technology, and I'm old enough to remember when television started, okay? And the stuff that people were saying about what it was going to do to our brains, and it has actually. And I'm really concerned about the power gobbling aspects of AI, and I hope AI can solve that, because really the balance between the needs of human beings, which in some ways I don't even think we deserve to survive, is and the technology is it's so unbalanced from my point of view. So I was really glad when you brought that up, Mark, that AI could possibly be the revolution that makes technology, makes energy cleaner. I studied ecology as a biologist, and I'm just I'm really, that's my biggest worry, is that things will in some way blow up. That's all I have to say.
Thanks. Responses from the panel?
I'm happy to jump in unless somebody else wants to jump in, but yeah, thank you, Sal. I think there's a very large disconnect between the billion plus people that don't have access to basic electricity, and there's probably another billion to 2 billion that have access to intermittent electricity. Those are going to be in some ways different solutions than, you know, what's the power required to power mega data centers. For example, we have the technology today to bring electricity to all of those people on the African continent and Southern Asian continent as well, even with small solar panels and batteries. Now, there's a whole other environmental aspect to that, but we do have that ability to do that. Powering massive AI data centers is going to require a wholesale rethink of power, including, but not limited to, you know, nuclear fusion. We talked about that, right? A lot that's coming in. It's going to happen, but all of these initiatives require the globe to come together and work together to understand these issues. And I think our biggest challenge, and even climate change, and even look at plastic pollution, we are really, really struggling to work together, to communicate together, to think. Like, we're so far apart on so many things, and we can't even get along. So I think there's a lot of other issues I think that need to be addressed alongside of the energy use consumption. But I do really believe that, I mean, whatever you want to think about it, but the 3 Mile Island nuclear, obviously there was a disaster there in the 80s, maybe, I don't know. But they're like, Microsoft came out and said, hey, look, we're gonna reimagine that reactor for data centers. I'm like, great, cool. Let's figure that out. Nuclear has had a rough go in the last little while, but I don't know how we're going to get to where we're going to go without something like nuclear. But if we're serious about fusion, then we've got to put a lot more money, brain power, resources, AI brain power, and start to help us to figure that out. And I really believe that we will. So again, I'm hopeful. But look, we had to pollute all of our rivers and oceans before we get to here. We had to cut down all the trees before we figure it out there. Like, look at, killed a lot of whales to get whale oil. So it's not great, and I think we can do better on this planet, but we do have a sort of a human trajectory that's both toxic but also kind of revolutionary. So I do think that I'm hopeful on that, but I'm happy to let Emmanuelle, Logan have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. To me, Sal, and to forward some of your comments, Mark, it is a question of our collective context, and if any one of us is serious about perpetuating life in our corner of the planet, we can no longer ignore that who I am as a human being is inexorably linked to who you are as a human being, times roughly 8 billion connections right now. And all of that, to go back to what you were talking about, the Gaia hypothesis, we now have seen, like, when we're not responsible for the background environment that supports and sustains human life, because it's no longer, operating within the parameters to support life in general, that has a direct impact on our own survivability. And my sense is that as a species, we're waking up to this new context of, we're human beings, we have a home planet called Earth. And I've heard it said many ways, but it's perhaps naive to think that we can escape this planet and survive as a species by colonizing a new planet when we can't even figure out how to manage the levers of control on a planet that was set up for our own survival in the first place.
Well, let me jump in on that, and I'll ask you to respond first, Emmanuelle, but I'd love to hear something from each of you quickly on this. And it's the idea around the boundaries of what we are as human beings, the way that we understand, the way that we show up as beings in the world. This is where I have tremendous dreams and also some uncertainty, and I guess you could call it fear. I handle uncertainty well, but I think for people it could be a very fearful situation of like, oh, I used to know what it meant to be a human being. And now I'm going to be talking to other species. Now my identity as a sexual being might be changing. Now there's questions of like what this whole species is doing on a planetary scale and what is our identity together. And now, the dark, what was Logan talking about, the dark unconscious, dimensions of ourselves that we can't even see. It's almost as like all of those are potentially shifting radically. So we have the moment of transforming into something that we didn't know what it was. And so I'm curious if you have any reflections on that. And Emmanuelle, maybe you could start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. And I think that it would be interesting to do this conversation from lenses, right? So we all have different lenses. And I think we could just, we could have a branch of the Fire's Edge that's looking at our hopes and fears for AI through a feminist lens, through a tech lens, through a ecology lens, right? And like for me, like I'm fascinated. I think like human beings probably have felt really excited to be alive since we started understanding the stars, right? But I think right now, I hear some of you say like we're understanding ourselves or whatever, but it's like no, we're just coming into discovering how the brain works, right? So psychology has made huge leaps with the Vietnam vets, and then we started to really understand it, but we're still not quite there, right? We can't even explain dreams still, right? And so I think, and we'll never all get along. It's too many of us, right? So I think for me, when I get to that, I need to take a philosophical point of view. And I need to thank you to my mom, who's in the chat, Colette, to remove myself from the planet. And I sort of look at the planet as separated from me, as if I was an alien, right? And it's like, oh, look at what the humans are doing, right? And I think that we forget that we are nature. We are the planet. We are part of all of it, right? We're not separate from it. And if anything, it's sci-fi, but if anything, I could see a subworld of this where AI does take over, and then we have no choice but to rally and to unite against that force, right? So I don't want to be pessimistic because that's a really pessimistic view, but I sort of fantasize about that sometimes, right? Like it could be what we need to unite. But I think I want to keep it positive and just say it will help us. It will be the tool that generate a lot of help for it, but we're never all gonna get along. So I think we just have to forget about that.
Can I add something to that? I totally agree. But I do think, we do have to sort of like understand the bounds and limitations of it. I mean, I look at there's probably going to be a whole generation of kids, for example, who before we understood truly the perils of cell phone use, right? Who were just thrust a phone and an iPad in front of them, and all of a sudden, it'll create a whole new type of problem for them. I mean, I didn't even grow up with technology in terms of like in 19 whatever 86 when we got a computer in our home, like that's when it started. But I find myself having interestingly addictive behaviors around my phone, and I'm aware of it. But I just think that we just have to be aware of it, and we've got to safeguard ourselves in some form or another. We've got to understand that. So I think that that's going to be an important part of this. But at some point, I mean, AI is going to start to be its own thing and already is. And I think that's going to be the question, right? It's like, where do we fit in to this, and how do we leverage it for the betterment of the planet, at least from a climate perspective?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Logan, any?
Well, what it's bringing up for me is kind of this fundamental relationship to identity. You kind of brought the conversation towards that lens, and for each of us, it's like one view is that we're an expression of the universe. There's some intricate, amazing, inexplicable cascade that led to this moment that had you be you and us be us and human beings be what human beings are. And so one expression of the universe is planet earthing. And so now it seems the universe wants to express itself in a new way, or a complementary way that we're calling artificial intelligence right now. It's in this seemingly new form of intelligence. And our context gives our relationship to any technology, any other human being, any community, any existence itself. And my my feeling in this whole conversation, and you talked about lenses, Emmanuelle, is until we can build some sort of collective human lens that allows for the diversity of lenses, but also brings some cohesive context, AI becomes just another tool in the same machinations of human history.
Okay, really brilliant. I saw you shaking your head, so I want to ask if you want to respond, Emmanuelle.
Yeah, I thought about saying that earlier and I didn't, but like I always go back to communism, right? Like it was a great idea, right? Like it was a brilliant, brilliant idea. It's like socialism, turbo socialism. But then what happens is that not everybody agreed to it. So then we took control and we controlled other humans, right? And that's the problem I see. So like we could be like a billion of us agreeing on how to deal with all the issues of the planet, right? Like I heard this crazy theory about seeding volcanoes could hand all climate change, right? But it's a big risk to do that. But then if the rest of them or the rest of us disagrees, then we have to take over them, right? So I really don't see the unity. I really don't see it. I think that we have to learn to live with all those differences. So like, I see the difference in your opinion and you see the difference in my opinion and we're okay with it. That might be the difference between men and women, right? Like, to make a huge generalization, but like, to bring it back to, and the time is flipping, to the movie industry. So I work in the movie industry as well, and I'm fascinated by what you said, and I would love for you to come to my union, the camera union, to speak about this, because I know that we throw out 30% of the food, and good luck convincing the Teamsters to turn off their trucks, right? But I think that, and for years, and here I am with my cup, so I'm not perfect, but for years I was the only one in the catering lunch truck with my own pluck, right? And people will be like, oh, what, you think you're going to save the world, with your pluck, instead of like using the disposable stuff, right? But like, I think we just need to be reasonable and accept differences. And that might be a feminine approach to things.
Okay. Well, this is just a beautiful place to end. And, it's actually really near and dear to my heart, the area of kind of philosophical thinking
Not on.
that is most, is my passion, is called meta theory. And it's about how do you combine all the theories into something that is deeply missing today, I believe, which is some kind of meta story of like, we're in this species-wide identity crisis and we don't have anything common that we can say we. And so I know it's delicate for all the reasons that you've stated, Emmanuelle, and more, but it is an interesting question. Like, what is this species here for? What are we about? Is there some way we could answer that? And it's a beautiful place to end. And I think AI puts a whole different angle on that question. So what a great inquiry today. We have a minute left. I'd love for you, if you have anyone, just feel free to come off mute and say like one word, what you're taking away from this, or what you'd like to hear more of. Just give us a couple words and let's end that way. So feel free to just come off mute and say what you're taking away today.
Perspective.
Fire's Edge is awesome.
I am humanity.
Human being.
All right. So for the Canadians on the call, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Eat lots of turkey. We love you, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Justin.